Thank you so much for very useful presentation and keynote speech. As mentioned by Dr. Franziska, that the full report is available on South Asia website of the World Bank. So, interesting thing about this speech as well as this entire report published by the South Asia region is that with reference to the theme of the conference, challenging linearity, we can actually look at the linearity as well as a non-linearity, because we can, so the nice thing about the report is that it not only compares South Asian countries, but it also provides the information and statistics at the South Asia region, but also emerging markets and developing economies, so that we have different benchmarks. And so that, for example, for Pakistan, if we, in some graphs we were looking at like growth and debt and a lot of things, we were on right hand side. But of course there are a lot of potentials we have in Pakistan. So from perspective of the theme, we can look at what lessons we can learn from other countries or emerging markets and developing economies, and what are our weaknesses and what are our strengths. Maybe we can do something very linearly. Easily we can adjust things. Or maybe we have to go beyond like linearity. Maybe there are some complex things which we can learn. So I think as a researcher, we can explore a lot of things based on this speech and also the entire report. Very, very useful speech for Pakistan and many other South Asian countries. So thank you so much for providing this opportunity that to have your speech, keynote speech. Thank you so much. So, another thing I just would like to mention that because this was the topic on the green growth, there are a lot of opportunities are emerging, especially because of Article 6 of Paris Agreement. There's a carbon market going on, and there are a lot of opportunities that converting and transition to the green energy and green products. There are a lot of financing in the world market going on. So it's not only that every time government has to invest in it, but rather it can be financed to the global market. So there are a lot of opportunities Pakistan and other South Asian countries can avail because of this ongoing implementation of this Article 6 of Paris Agreement. So with this, now the floor is open for the question and answers. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that. I have two questions. I think you said that Pakistan needs 7% growth to get up to the upper middle income country level. Now how does that happen in a country like Pakistan, where if you go above 2.5%, our balance of payments goes haywire. The IMF tells us to constrain, to adjust structural reforms. I agree we need structural reforms, but it completely slows down the economy. So there is a very major structural impediment of numerous, not a, but numerous structural impediments which will not allow growth to be, I won't use the word sustainable because sustainable means different things, but will allow the growth to take place to be anywhere near any horizon which you've suggested. We'll just be borrowing, or the balance of payments crisis. So that's the first one. The second, so what does one do? The second is breaking from the past. One of the things that you may have modeled is what happens if South Asia thinks of itself as a region, not as 6 or 7 countries. Not the EU, not Mercosur, not NAFTA, not ASEAN, but at least as a region where they talk about something which hasn't happened in the last 76 years. That's where we break from the past, where they talk about collaboration, joint ventures, whether it's climate change, whether it's burning crops in Indian Punjab or Pakistani Punjab, pollution, whatever you want to call it, and especially if it's talking about green technologies. Is that at all modeled into the work that you've done? And what are the consequences of a better, more agreeable future for South Asia, which in the last 75 years we've completely missed out on? Thank you.
Dr. Franziska, wonderful presentation. This is Muhammad Ishan. I'm from PIDE. You told that Pakistan has very low tax to GDP ratio, 10%, and there is a potential in the energy market, transition for the energy market, but the low funding doesn't allow us, right? On the other hand, we have low private investment rate in Pakistan, and you suggested that there are many governments where government investment has the capacity to boost growth and productivity. So how about market empowerment, right? Do you suggest that we don't have market mechanism to overcome our problems and we need a stronger government intervention? Thank you.
We will take one more question. Yes, please.
My question is related to the green jobs. In Pakistan is already below the industrialization. We are not doing large enterprise. So in this situation, if you really want to create more jobs and we have less resources according to the topography and geographical locations, since green technology and eco-friendly technology requires such resources in order to have the integration. So my question is that what will we do, how to integrate jobs in order to give a transition from pollution jobs to the eco-friendly jobs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent questions. Let me first get back to your first comment. There is a lot of finance out there. I mean, green investment is the hot theme at the moment. There is a lot of finance for green investment. And that's why we focus on firms, because governments don't have the money, especially in this region, they don't have the money. So it's about firms financing the transition. That is really where we see the promise that it's the private sector. This is an opportunity for the private sector to generate growth and productivity. Now, Dr. Saidi, how to achieve the 7%? There are two ways of looking at this. One is that it can't be achieved. The other way of looking at this is what would it take to achieve it? I think this is the spirit of the Reforms for Brighter Future program, know that you get that. The problem, of course, is that you're right. A lot of these reforms will impose some pain on some people. Or some groups. Even the local years, they will behave for a broader number of people. But it's true that there is this very difficult political trade-off between groups that would like to pay in the short run. And that's very difficult for politics. We did actually in 2016 when I was still working on the global. In 2016, when we were still working on that global publication that the World Bank brings out, we did a comparison of spillovers and regional integration between emerging markets and developing economy regions. And this is the least integrated region of all. Now, admittedly, the World Bank construct of South Asia is a bit different from all the other, everyone has their own construct of a region. So maybe if you had South Asia and East Asia, it would be more, but it wouldn't. This region, as a first approximation, is the most close of all the emerging market and developing economy regions. It's such an opportunity missed, because trade has been one of the biggest drivers of growth across emerging markets and developing economies. Capital flows, technology flows between countries, open borders where the food doesn't rot because it's stuck in the queue at the customs. That's the kind of thing that allows trade. So it's really an opportunity missed. So we don't have it in our forecast. In our forecast, we assume status quo. But really, I wish we had a forecast. How much could the region gain if it became more like the normal emerging market and developing economy, like the average, more like the average emerging market and developing economy region? On your market empowerment, I think that goes back to the private investment, the weakness of it and the need to unleash it. And it's really an unleashing because the private sector in many ways is shackled in the region. I showed you the chart with these exchange export and import restrictions. In the report, we have the capital flow restrictions. I showed you the chart with the foreign exchange restrictions. So many restrictions. It's difficult to operate with all these restrictions that are more than in other emerging markets and developing economies. So it maybe one way of unleashing the private sector is simply for the government to step back and concentrate on its core function, which is, for example, public utilities, the public grid that allows firms, that gives firms even the option to move to energy-efficient technologies. Without the public grid, firms don't have an option of shutting down these backup generators. Public investment into proper water, proper sewage, so you don't have 40% of kids being stunted. So maybe that is what it needs to really unleash, unshackle the private sector. Back to your question on how do you create jobs? So we will have actually an edition in April that will look exactly at that question. How is the region creating jobless growth? And I can tell you by our preliminary results, there's nothing wrong with the growth process here. It's not more jobless than it is elsewhere. The problem is growth is too low. There's just not enough growth, even if that growth generates a normal, whatever you define as normal, a normal number of jobs. So really what needs to be done is to generate growth. It'll benefit private investment, the energy transition, it'll benefit governments that then can provide better government services to create more welfare for everyone. It's growth that's missing, and for that you need reforms for a brighter future, a really broad-based program for growth that has a government delivering also, having the resources to deliver on its mandate.
Thank you so much. Just last two questions, given the time limitations. Please introduce yourself and then a very quick question. Only two questions.
My name is Salim Khan from PIDE. My question is about climate change. Climate change is more threat to the global financial system than to the developing countries. And I think one of the financial studies said that if this threat goes on, so the global financial system will collapse and it will bring $1 trillion loss. So I think green investment come from advanced countries. So there is a leverage to the advanced country to mitigate this financial risk and give this technology free of cost to this developing country, because we can't leapfrogging, because these countries already has created this pollution problems. So how we can, developing country, advanced country expect from us that spend billions of dollars to leapfrog it and to mitigate this financial risk, which also has a huge risk to this financial global crisis. So this is my question. So what's your take on?
Thank you. Dr. Alia, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much. My question is related to the graph you showed regarding the manufacturing and the service sector. The manufacturing in Pakistan has been going down, and whereas to increase the manufacturing, you always need low-cost sources of energy. So, and as perhaps the research have shown that the burning of the fossils is the lowest source of energy. So if we want to increase the manufacturing of the country, and is that a trade-off between manufacturing and promoting the green energy? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is about climate financing. Just about 2 weeks ago, there was a moot on climate financing in Islamabad, organized by UNCTAD and partner organization. And there was a very serious discussion on the capacity to approach climate financing, and more so for the SMEs, because they are not enabled to go through the process of accessing these funds. And therefore, the whole green transition also depends a lot on the capacity and the capability to attract and access these funds. So your thoughts about how can countries, address, obviously there are reforms and structural issues involved there, but without that it seems impossible to really access climate financing. Thank you.
Okay, very briefly. So on the mitigation of the climate, greenhouse gas emissions, essentially. Of course, even if Pakistan fixed all, had no greenhouse gas emission whatsoever, it would not solve the world's greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, Pakistan's problem is the natural disasters. South Asia's problem actually is the natural disasters that come from climate change. And that's where the focus of governments has to be, how to mitigate them, how to adapt to them, in two ways. First, make the impact not so bad, and that can be done through climate resilient infrastructure. So the road doesn't wash away every time there's a flood. But the second is to help people move. And we will actually we are working on a research program on how does the private sector adapt? Farmers, households, firms, they face these losses and they will take action. So we are now doing a whole work program on how do these private sector actors adapt, and how can governments help them adapt, to vote with their feet, move elsewhere, in agriculture, find different varieties, drought-resistant, flood-resistant varieties, etc. There is large potential, there has to be large potential for the private sector to absorb or reduce the damage, simply because the government's resources are limited. On the trade-off between manufacturing and energy intensity, so what we hope to show with this work here, is that there doesn't have to be a trade-off, because this energy-efficient technology, if incentives are right, is actually the profit-maximizing technology. It's the technology that will increase productivity and that will allow firms to expand. So we are hoping that it's most obvious, I guess, this collateral benefit of energy-efficient technology. We are hoping that the manufacturing sector can really benefit from it. Services is not so easy for it to benefit. Some of the services are transport services. There are electrical vehicles, but electrical vehicles have their own issues because you need to have charging stations everywhere. So you need to have the infrastructure that comes with it. Whereas in the manufacturing sector, there are known energy-efficient technologies that work very well elsewhere and that can be adopted by firms if they face the right incentives, like, for example, a non-negative carbon price. As long as the carbon price is negative, there's very little incentive to adjust. On the climate financing, you're absolutely right. That is a bit the quandary. The most energy inefficient firms is that long tail of SMEs. That's informal, unproductive, small, no access to finance. How do you get them to move? And it has to be, one is of course access to finance, but another is to mobilize them through the right incentives. So again, coming back to the positive carbon price, etc. That there is a strong incentive for them, because we were actually very encouraged by that randomized control trial, how it showed that a few firms realizing the profits to be had from energy efficient technology suddenly triggered lots of firms adopting the new technology, even those who were never exposed to the experiment. So news travels very quickly, including among SMEs. So we hope, if they face the right incentives, there are technologies out there, I wouldn't know, but policymakers can't know every industry, but they will figure it out very quickly what is worth investing in.
Thank you so much for fantastic and very, very useful keynote speech and the interaction. Thank you so much. A big round of applause.